Sorry about that. Jesus Christ, my freaking live went off. Dang it. Wait. My live went off for some reason. Jesus Christ. That was, I don't know, stupid. Hello, Helen Logan. Again. Yeah, for some reason my live went disconnected, so yeah. But we're gonna continue anyway, so let's get it.
A door opens, and what appears to be a starved and abused shaven chimpanzee enters, with its whole body painted red. It sniffs the air for a moment, and then moves over to the woman and mauls her to death. It then proceeds to eat flesh off her body as the video ends. The site was deleted 3 days later.
Yeesh. That's must have been gone too soon. Can we get people watching the live stream, please?
The strangest security tape I have ever seen. This story details what happens after a new guy, Jeremy, starts working at the gas station the author of the story is working at. He behaved very strangely and had a very creepy laugh. After a while, things started going missing in the station, and after reviewing the security tapes from when Jeremy was working there, they come across something terrifying. Jeremy himself seems to be messing with everyone and appears to be able to manipulate time for his own needs. The author soon gets stuck in one of Jeremy's time loops, and after many strange happenings, the author tries to call the police, who investigates where Jeremy apparently lives, but finds nothing but a burned down house. The author closes the story by stating, "A new guy has just started, called Jeremy." The loop had begun once more.
Well, that loop about to be an eternity.
Happy, Happy.
I'm a happy.
Happy Happy was an old show that was apparently broadcasted on Nick Jr. before being abruptly taken off the air very quickly, due to some episodes of the show taking dark turns. The show depicted a clay apple, Happy Happy, helping children with injuries. After a while, he developed a death stare by staring directly into the camera at the viewer. He also began violently killing children, all implied and happening off-screen. One episode even depicted two planes crashing into two large towers, implied to be the World Trade Centers. When rubble hit a child, and the others tried to help, Appy led them away from the scene, claiming,
"That's natural, children."
the strange part was, the episode aired years before 9/11. What seemed to be an innocent yet rather morbid children's show in the beginning soon turns into something much bigger and more terrifying as the author comes in contact with the show's director, Forensic. Something about this show was not right at all.
I can agree with him. That show ain't fine. It's a fucking mousetrap.
Barbie.avi.
Yeesh.
Barbie.avi begins with the author finding an old abandoned computer outside his apartment, and when bringing it in, he searches through the computer for old files and found a video file named Barbie.avi. The video was nearly an hour long, and the audio quality was incredibly poor. The video seemed to be an interview with a young, attractive woman, but the more the interviewer asked questions, the more the woman seemed to get saddened. Her face turned red, and she began sobbing. This went on until she cried so hard she couldn't speak. She simply sunk her head down, and the video faded to black. After staying black for a while, the video came back, showing a pair of legs walking along a couple of train
If you heard
tracks.
more,
The author recognized the tracks and went there. He soon found an abandoned house. The only locked door in the whole house was to that of the basement, and the furniture inside the house seemed way too new to be there. When the author reached the second-story bathroom, the dust had been wiped off the mirror, and a wet, plastic tarp could be found in the bathroom. The author then heard a loud moan behind him, and he jumped out of the window and escaped. He later theorized that it could have been the piping in the house sounding. But then again, why would water be running in a seemingly abandoned house?
yeah, why would there be water running in an abandoned house? And if you guys heard a motorcycle, that's just my neighborhood, so yeah.
No End House. There apparently exists a house somewhere, and if you make it through the hotel's 9 rooms, you would be rewarded with a $500 cash prize. The lobby of the place and the first few rooms would be ridiculously tame and laughable, but the further the visitors would venture into the house, the worse things would get, pushing both the physical and mental limitations of those brave enough to enter. Be warned, you might not make it out of there.
I'm pretty sure that's why it's called No End House.
The SpongeBob bootleg episode.
A bootleg?
This frame is from a bootlegged episode of the SpongeBob episode, Dumped.
That's a bootleg.
The episode itself consisted of loud buzzing noises, flashing colours, and jumbled static. Not much else is known about the tape. The tape itself was found by 5 teenagers who found it in a trash can near an abandoned mental institution. Of these 5 individuals, 2 have committed suicide. 1 has gone missing. 1 refuses to comment on the tape. And the last agreed to let paranormal detectives investigate the tape. No one knows where the tape is now, and many who stare at this image for a long period of time claim to see SpongeBob blink.
Where bad kids go.
Where do they go?
Becoming an officer meant a lot to me. When I was in basic training, I met pilots and navigators, and I just saw them wearing the officer rank.
That was disappointing.
During the author's childhood, when there was a war in Lebanon, he used to watch a children's show that broadcasted incredibly violent and gruesome imagery. The morals of each episode would always end with messages such as, "Bad kids stay up late," or "Bad kids steals food from the fridge." Every episode would also end with the camera zooming in at a big, locked door, and the closer the camera got to the door, screams of pain and agony could be heard. Text would then appear on screen stating, "That's where bad kids go."
So that's where they go.
When the author got older, he did some research and found out where the show had been produced all those years ago. When opening the infamous door from the program, he froze. Blood, feces, and bones were everywhere, and a caged microphone was standing in the middle of the room. The screams had been real.
So that show was a reality show.
The Holders. Legend has it, if you go into any mental institution, shop, or such, and ask to see a holder, you will be led to a room where you will be put through a test to test your might. These tests are oftentimes incredibly hard to complete, but finishing them would result in you obtaining one of the 538 objects of the holders. Those seeking for these objects would oftentimes turn into different people, making them villainous or evil. People have often theorized that if one were to bring all 538 objects together, they would bring about the end of the world. They must never come together.
Sheesh. Never come together. That's like everything.
NES Godzilla.
I like the story.
When the author of this story receives an unusual copy of Godzilla for, Well, the NES. The game is much different than from how he remembers it from his childhood. New characters appeared everywhere, worlds were changed, the game would break the fourth wall, and the author would be haunted by a creature simply known as Red. As the story goes on, more and more is learned about Red and why the game is behaving so strangely. The story itself starts off interesting, but slows down in the middle and isn't overly creepy, until you reach the final chapters, where everything falls into place and goes insane. I highly recommend this one.
I've read the story. It's kind of good, especially the ending.
Dead Bart. Dead Bart was a lost episode of the first season of The Simpsons, apparently written entirely by Matt Groening. During production of this season, Matt seemed to act very strangely. Mentioning this to anyone present at the time would make them incredibly angry.
I wonder
The
why.
author of the story soon meets Matt at a fan event and confronts him about the episode. Matt, looking almost teary-eyed, agreed to give him a link to a website. The website contained nothing but a download link to the episode, and the author decided to watch it. Act 1 begun, and the characters behaved very much unlike their normal behavior. Homer, for example, was unusually angry. The family boarded a plane, and like usual, Bart was making a ruckus. But while in the air, one of the plane windows break, and Bart is sucked out. Act 1 ends with a shot of Bart's dead corpse, which was almost unrecognizable, almost photorealistic. Act 2 started with the family sitting at the table, sobbing uncontrollably. Bart was nowhere to be seen. The animation decayed until the family was nothing but brightly lit colors. Faces could be seen in the window, popping in and out now and then, briefly, but they appeared so fast that you could not make out what or who they were. Act 3 started, stating 1 year had passed. The family, apart from the pets and Maggie, appeared bone-thin, still sitting at the table. They got up and made their way to the local cemetery. Springfield looked entirely deserted and abandoned.
Damn.
When they finally got to Bart's grave, Bart was just lying there on the ground. Homer then said a joke, but due to distortion you cannot make out what he says. The episode ended with the camera zooming out, revealing numerous gravestones of every single Simpson guest star on them, even those after season 1. For those who have died since, such as Michael Jackson, the date of death was correct. But there was something unusual about the dates of guest stars who are still alive. All of their deaths are listed at the same date.
So everyone died in the same day?
Squidward's suicide. While working as an intern at Nickelodeon, the author usually got to watch and reflect on episodes of SpongeBob before they aired on television. It wasn't paid, but to him, it was like a dream coming true. One day, he and the rest of the interns gathered to watch the season opener of season 4. The editors of SpongeBob usually added in funny fake title cards as a joke for the interns, so when the interns saw the title Squidward's Suicide, they didn't think twice about it. The episode itself, though, was anything but funny. After being booed off stage, Squidward could be seen in his bedroom quietly sobbing to himself while covering his face. The screen violently twitched and showed numerous frames in different areas. When looking back at these frames, the interns and the editors' jaws dropped. On screen were images of numerous children with their stomachs cut open and their entrails pulled out. The episode then ends with Squidward crying tears of blood as he grabs a shotgun and kills himself. The editors and interns were equally confused and horrified, and local authority was called in. The children in the episode were never identified, and no one has ever been caught. To this day, the author is still haunted by that one fateful day.
Man, author, I feel so sorry for you. Author.
The Showers.
We all have that teacher who is cooler than the others. Mr. Mays, from this story, was just like that. On Halloween night, many years ago, he decided to share his most frightening memory from his youth. He and a couple friends were in Broken Bow, Nebraska, and came across a seemingly abandoned cellar near a barn. When opening the cellar door, they were met with long, uneven tunnel with several light bulbs. After traversing the tunnel, the young men were confronted with a newly painted red door. When opening it, they saw what appeared to be children with long, dark hair and pale skin. They got out of there as soon as possible. Years later, the author went to Broken Bow and decided to seek out this mysterious place. He and his friend Stephen soon found themselves in an area very similar to the one Mr. Mace had described years ago. And soon enough, they are both put through something terrifying as they find more than what they asked for.
Marina Mordegard.
What the hell was that?
That's what I'm saying.
The Lavender Town Myths.
Mmm.
Rumor has it that the
Lavender
original versions of
Town.
Pokemon Red and Green in Japan had several frequencies and binaural beats that apparently caused young children to feel sick, receive headaches, and in extreme cases, commit suicide. Coupled together with supposedly removed beta content, such as the White Hand, a supposed enemy that was to appear in the Pokemon Tower, the Buried Alive model, the original boss of Pokemon Tower who, if the player lost to, would devour the player character along with a very creepy song playing in the background known as Static Mesh.avi.
Wrong. that beat was fire.
Username 666. There is a rumor going around that if one were to go to youtube.com/666 and refresh the page numerous times, this is what supposedly happens. After refreshing the page for a while, the page would gradually transform into a hellish red, decaying YouTube channel. If one were to click on one of the videos, you would never be able to escape.
Okay.
Slenderman. Slenderman.
Of course.
What creepypasta list would not be complete without him? Slenderman is a mythological being who is shrouded in mystery, described as looking like a tall, thin, and faceless man with a black suit as dark as the night. Games, such as Pokemon Red, among others.
Sorry about that.
Those who played the game widely consider it to be one of the scariest video games of all time. The game would have you control a young boy through a mysterious building, who would occasionally be visited by an evil creature, theorized to be the devil himself. The game would contain numerous puzzles, such as the most known one, the cabin puzzle. The player would be presented with 4 different cabins to go in, and a text box would appear stating, "Choose wrong, and misfortune will befall your loved ones. Are you ready to play?"
I'm not.
If one were to choose the wrong path, a game over screen would appear, along with a more detailed version of the being stating, "I am God here."
Damn.
The players who supposedly witnessed the game over screen would then suffer from extreme depression. Some wrote the whole thing off as a joke, yet some truly believe that witnessing the game over screen could actually cause misfortune to the player, just as the game had promised.
Jesus. Anyway, next up.
Smile Dog. A journalist was invited to the house of an old woman who apparently had an interesting story to tell him. When the man got there, though, the woman had locked herself in her room, spouting insane nonsense and refusing to talk to anyone. When she eventually decided to speak, she gave the journalist a floppy disk containing nothing but an image file named smile.jpg. The image file in question is a supposed picture of a demonic husky dog with a human-like smile. Legend has it that if you receive Smile Dog as an email, it is important that you spread the word by sharing it to someone else in order for the curse to end. If you do not do this, the picture will grow gradually worse and worse, and Smile Dog will appear in your dreams, demanding you to spread the word, ultimately driving you to insanity.
Shit.
Some say the original chain letter started with an image of the devil.
Well, devil, Satan, whatever. Hey, can we get more people in the chat? Hey, yo, have a look and can you reply something?
Candle Go. What if a show you watched as a child turned out to be something far bigger than what you previously expected? That is the case with Candle Cove. The story begins with a few forum users discussing old nostalgic television shows, and one show in particular sparks some interest, namely Candle Cove. At first, the forum users innocently discuss the show, its characters, its low-budget charm, and its controversial main villain, the Skin Taker, who was a skeleton who skinned children alive in order to make a cape. But the more the users remember about the show, the darker cracks start to show. The last episode of the series, for example, consisted of nothing but random shots of different characters, along with horrific screaming taking up all audio, while the main character, Janice, could be seen crying, as if she had been through hours of it. The story ends with a forum user asking his mother about the show, and his mother replying with how she remembered his little pirate show, and how he used to sit in front of the television for about half an hour, watching nothing but static.
Well, that's one thing kids enjoy nowadays. Static. By now. Number 6. We're almost done.
The Rake. Much like Slender Man, the Rake is a mythological creature recorded throughout history that stalks its prey. But while Slender Man mostly targeted children, the Rake has no boundaries. Described as a humanoid or dog-like creature with long, sharp claws and an unnatural body position, it stalks, taunts, and scares its victims to insanity and death.
Sheesh.
If the Rake chooses you as its next victim, it will not stop until you're dead. It's able to stalk you, observe you, and sneak into your bedroom while you're asleep incredibly easy. If one spots it, no one is safe.
I'm already not safe because of that thing. Now I feel unsafe.
Gateway of the Mind. A team of scientists once conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists had theorized that a person without access to any senses or ways to perceive stimuli would be able to perceive the presence of God. An elderly man was the only person to volunteer, who claimed to have nothing left to live for. The scientists performed a complex operation on the man, removing all of his senses. He could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel.
So he cannot do
After a few
anything?
days, the man claimed he was hearing mumbled voices in his head, and 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking to him, and even stranger, he could communicate back. The scientists weren't fully convinced, until the man began naming dead relatives of the scientists themselves. The man grew more and more distressed, for at every waking moment, he could hear the deceased speaking to him, refusing to leave him alone. He began clawing at where his eyes should be, and biting off chunks of his own flesh to feel something. The scientists rushed in and restrained the man to a table, so he could not kill himself. He soon stopped struggling, and instead started crying non-stop for 2 whole weeks. Then, out of nowhere, the man, despite his apparent blindness, focused his eyes on one of the scientists and spoke his final words.
I have spoken with God, and he has abandoned us.
His vitals then stopped, and he dropped dead. There was no apparent cause of death.
Damn. What tragic death. I kind of feel sorry for the guy.
Mario. Mario was a strange Super Mario World ROM hack that was found on the SMW Central. The hack itself contained 2 files, one ROM file and one TXT file. The TXT file contained nothing but random nonsense except for one repeated phrase at the top of the page. Find me. The hack itself was also very peculiar, as all enemies appeared to be missing, and all levels had very strange ways of beating them. The most unsettling parts of the hack, though, were the numerous text boxes that appeared throughout the game. Most importantly, during one of the game's cinematics, detailing an apparent murder scene in unsettling detail. The hack ends with Mario traversing a long, dark corridor and eventually sinking into the floor as if he was going down a pipe. The author of the story theorized as to what the hack actually meant, and he came to the conclusion that Mario was in a hell of his own, atoning for his actions throughout his life, where he was lost to the grip of death forever.
Jeez.
After the story was posted to the SMW Central, someone got the brilliant idea to convert the strange TXT file into an image file to see what would happen. The image he was presented with has since then been widely considered to be victim number 1.
That's not creepy at all. Haha.
SuicideMouse.avi. Suicide Mouse was an apparent cartoon created by Walt Disney himself in the 1930s. The video itself was nothing but a looping animation of Mickey walking down a road, looking rather bored. The music sounded unsettling and creepy, as if someone was simply banging on random piano notes. The video would then cut to black, and people for a while believed that that was the end of the video. Until a few years ago. When reviewing the cartoon for DVD, it was revealed to in fact be 9 minutes and 4 seconds long. On the 6th minute, Mickey came back on screen, walking. And this is what happened afterwards.
Well, everyone get their earmuffs. I bet they hear some screams.
In the end, a close-up of Mickey's face is shown, possibly to signify the end of the episode.
Well, that totally wasn't unsettling and creepy.
The Russian sleep experiment. In the 1940s, Russian researchers brought in 5 test subjects to test an experimental gas. The subjects themselves were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Bringing them in, they were all kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake. After 5 days, the subjects began demonstrating extreme paranoia. They began alternately whispering into the microphones inside the cell and tried to turn over their comrades. After 9 days, one of the subjects began screaming at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight before stopping abruptly, as he had apparently ripped out his own vocal cords. The other subjects did not react to this at all, and a few days later, the whispering abruptly stopped as well. The researchers announced that they were opening the chamber doors over the intercom, but to their surprise, a calm voice responded with,
We no longer want to be freed.
The room was filled with fresh air, and the subjects immediately begged for more gas. The chamber was opened, and soldiers were sent in to retrieve them. What they saw was beyond their wildest imagination.
I'm gonna say this trigger warning, cause like there's gonna be shit. There's gonna be some like graphic shit. So if you're vulnerable to that, you can actually technically I can't do a trigger warning since oh my god, there's only one person watching. I expect this live stream to be a little bit bigger, but no. Oh well, let's continue. Trigger warning though.
4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, and chunks of meat had been stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing water to accumulate on the floor. The remaining 4 subjects had removed large portions of their skin and flesh, exposing their lungs and showing that they were in fact digesting their own flesh. The subjects put up a fierce fight, and one of the subjects even died fighting, screaming for more and more
and more gas.
The remaining 3 subjects were restrained and moved to a medical facility, and when asked to receive morphine to care for the subject's wounds, the subject simply shook its head and told the doctors to keep cutting. Soon, the subjects were ordered to be put back inside the chamber along with 3 security guards, but one of the guards immediately drew his gun and shot the commander and one of the remaining subjects as the others fled the scene. He pointed his gun at the last remaining subject and said, "I won't be locked in there with those things. Not with you. What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject smiled.
Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralyzes when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread.
The guard then shot him, and just before he died, he weakly choked out.
So
Yes, that's what I want too. I want to be free. That's creepy.
Now, before I reveal my number 1 pick, remember that it is simply my opinion and my opinion alone. So if you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. We all think and react in different ways. It's what makes us unique. And fans of my channel probably already know what I've picked. So with that in mind, I present to you my number 1 pick, The Harbinger Experiment. In 1971, a scientist nicknamed Zimmerman by the author, who showed keen interest in the occult and supernatural, invites the protagonist to work for him on an experiment like no other. When the author saw the payout, he knew he couldn't resist. 15 people were hired in total. Some were old colleagues of Zimmerman, some were maintenance workers, and some were hired as private security. Deep in the frozen wilderness of Alaska, in a deep underground system, the experiment began to take form. The area the experiment was conducted in was very confusing, almost maze-like, and the whole place felt very cold and isolated, almost creepy. The only exit to the area was through a thick metal lid up a very long ladder. The purpose of the experiment, according to Zimmerman, was to prove the existence of the metaphysical, a world we could not see.
Well, I'm done with the live stream. But you know what? We're gonna end it right here. So if you guys mostly enjoyed the live stream, thank you for coming. I will see you guys.